I paid $275 to fix my hips. Here's that exact routine. You see, a while back, I could barely sit without hip pain. So I went to a hip specialist and after 2 sessions, received a 10-minute workout routine. And honestly, this is the routine I wish I had sooner. But before we dive in, let me quickly explain why our hips get so messed up in the first place. Now here's the thing, our bodies adapt to whatever we do most. If you run a lot, for example, your bones become more dense. If you sit for 8 hours a day, well, your body adapts to that. So let's take a quick look at the standard sitting position. So for one, your hip flexors are constantly bent. 2, your hamstrings are compressed. And the glutes, the biggest muscle in your body, are basically on vacation. And this is where the problems start. You see, when I first went to go see Tony, he told me my hip flexors were extremely tight. And so I asked, okay, well, if I stretch more, will that fix it? And surprisingly, Tony looked at me and said, well, not quite. So this is how he explained it to me. Stretching a tight hip flexor is kind of like pulling on a rubber band. It stretches out, sure, but after 20 to 30 minutes, it just snaps right back. So to create lasting change, you don't just stretch, you also have to strengthen the muscle. In other words, strengthen and lengthen. Now, at first I didn't buy into this, and honestly, at the start, I didn't stick to the program as well as I should have. But then the discomfort started getting worse. And so I started doing the program more consistently, and yep, Tony was right. So the program I got focused on 2 main goals. 1, opening the hips with movements that improve both internal and external rotation. And number 2, activating the backside, meaning strengthening the muscles that support your hips and undoing the effects of sitting. And my favorite part is this routine only takes 10 minutes. I usually do it after work or right before I hop in the shower, because honestly, that's the only time I remember, but do what works for you. Alright, so to start, we're gonna open our external rotation, which is a problem for so many people. So get into a deep lunge with your right leg forward and left knee on the ground. Now open your right leg out to the side and try your best to get it in line with your torso. From here, we're going to lean towards that leg while squeezing our outer glute. Then hold the bottom position for 3 seconds. After this, return to the starting position. If you're doing this right, you should feel this deep in the inner groin and hip area on the left leg. And to make it even more effective, try adding a bit of weight. It will help you sink deeper. So let's keep it moving. The second move hits the forgotten zone, internal rotation. It's crucial for squats, running, walking, and basically just moving like a human. And I didn't even realize how bad mine was until I noticed my legs would just naturally spread out. A nightmare for anyone sitting next to me on public transport. So yeah, this one matters more than people think. To start, line your back with your knees bent and feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Then drop both knees to one side slowly, especially if you're really stiff, and place your opposite leg on top to assist the stretch. If you're doing this correctly, you should feel a nice stretch in the outside section of your hip. So I just urge you to take it slow and don't force anything. Alright, now that we've loosened up our external and internal rotations, let's go after the front side of the hip. So get back into a deep lunge, right leg forward and left knee on the ground. From here, you're going to lift your back knee up and straight, trying your best to keep your hips squared forward. The real key here is to squeeze with your thigh and glute at the same time to control the lift. Hold at the top for 2 to 3 seconds, then slowly lower down. Do this for 8 to 10 reps per each side. Now a pro tip, if your hips are feeling extra stiff, like mine was, place a yoga block or grab a chair to help lift you up. This is going to be a bit less taxing on the hips. So we've opened the hips and built some control, so you should be feeling a bit more looser right now. But back when I was working long hours and sitting way over 10 hours a day, this is exactly where I used to stop. I stretch a little, feel slightly better, and then go right back to sitting. And I always wondered why nothing really changed. Well, that's when my physiotherapist introduced me to something known as glute amnesia, which basically means your glutes went on one of those extended coffee breaks, but just never came back. And when that happens, your body starts outsourcing the work to your lower back, hamstrings, and even your calves. Basically anything that's willing to help, which means trouble. So here's a 3-step glute bridge progression I got from Tony. And honestly, this worked wonders for me. For the first time, I was doing a glute exercise that I actually felt in my glutes. So here's what to do. Line your stomach like you're pretending to nap. Bend one knee so your heel is facing the ceiling. Now gently lift the knee off the floor, just a tiny movement. Now the key here is to focus on your glute because it's the one that should be doing all the work, not your lower back. Do 10 to 12 reps with 3 sets. If this is challenging, start with this, but if this is too easy, move on to step 2. Lie on your back with your knees bent and feet hip width apart. Pull your toes slightly up and put pressure into the heels. Now push off, hold the top position for 2 seconds, and then slowly come down with control. Do 10 to 12 reps with 3 sets. When you really feel this in your glutes and it becomes easy, you can move on to step 3. So we're going to get into the same position as step 2, except now we're going to lift off with one foot while the other foot is straight. And while at the top position, we're going to hold for 5 seconds and slowly lower down. Really focus on trying to keep your hips level as you can, so avoid letting one side sag down. If this happens, or this move is just way too hard, go back to step 2 and build confidence there first. Do this 3 rounds per leg with 5 reps. So if you sit for work, this routine is like giving your hips their morning coffee. It wakes them up, reminds them what they're supposed to do, and helps you move like a normal human again. Alright, that's it for today. Hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next one.